Today, I am going to be sharing tips, easy tips for homeschooling high school. Actually, I have about 4 points I want to share, and I wrote them right up here on the side because when I get talking homeschool, and especially high school, I get really excited, and I have a lot to say. But that won't do you any good if you don't take away anything from this conversation with you. So I am excited to be here. So I'm going to make 3 points about homeschooling high school. The first point is, what are the basics? What do we have to pay attention to? The second point is, how do we keep the options open for our teen? And then I'm going to talk about how to pursue passions, and can we really teach independence, or is it a myth? And then, of course, I have a lot more to say in between there, too. And I'm excited again for being here. First, let me tell you who I am and get past that part. I'm Tina Robertson. I've been homeschooling a long time, close to 23 years now. I have 3 homeschool grads, so I have kids well past 10 years old. I've experienced the middle school and the high school years and the after. So there's a lot that I want to share with you. I have a website, Tina's Dynamic Homeschool Plus. I know, I didn't think about the name when I started the website. I just thought about how excited I was. And then I have my private Facebook group, Homeschool Dynamics by Tina Robertson. And then my page, How to Homeschool Easy. I'm on Instagram at Tina's Homeschool and Pinterest, of course. You can come follow me there after you watch this workshop that I have for you and these points that I'm excited to share with you. Okay, so the first point that I want to talk about is, how do we build a solid foundation for high school? Well, it's real important to remember that your journey so far dictates your view of the high school years. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I've homeschooled from the beginning. My kids were not influenced by public school. So they really don't feel that the requirements that public school were putting down, if you will, for teens, that they really had to meet them. Now, of course, I had guidelines that I wanted them to meet, but the point is they weren't influenced by public school up until high school. And why is that a good, bad thing? Well, I feel it's a good thing because what can happen is that sometimes kids can be spoon-fed. Any appearance of independence is taken away. We say we want for them to be independent, but we take every decision away from them. So I'm going to talk more about that in my point 3, but I'm going to tie that point with what I'm making here my first point, which is we have to build a solid foundation for high school. It's not a mystery. It's not something that has to overwhelm us. We don't have to jump right into thinking, oh, I got to keep up with credits and transcripts and college and careers. Yes, we eventually have to get there, but that's not really even needed until the end of the high school years. In the beginning, you have time to adjust to high school. So the point is that the high school years, they're just a continuation of what you've been doing the previous years up until this time. And when I mean the continuation, I just mean the 3 R's, the skill subjects. Sometimes in some states, they're called core or non-core subjects. The skill subjects, math and language arts. But at these high school years, they also include science and history. Whereas in the younger years, I've encouraged you to stay focused on the skill subjects. But long about the fourth or fifth grade, just so you understand some of the learning process, because if you don't have a picture of the learning process, it's hard for you to see, perhaps if your teen is struggling in high school, it's hard for you to see where, do I need to make up or do we need to go back? So if you understand a little bit of the process, it helps you to find or diagnose the problem or put a pulse on it, so to speak. So along about the fourth or fifth grade, the shift focuses from the skill subjects to the content subjects or to the non-core subjects. But here's the beauty. By the time you get to the teen years, composition, reading, or literature, grammar, all of these are coming together. They're all connected. They don't have to be studied in isolation or separate subjects, and they're not, because all bodies of knowledge really are connected. And to a teen, that makes more sense. That makes more sense. So what we do when we come to the high school years is we stay focused on the core subjects: math, language arts, history, and science. Now, I don't want your head to spin. I don't want to lose you, because I want you to understand that under language arts, we have several slots. When I mean slots, I mean subjects. That's why a lot of people get confused. They're like, oh, language arts. Well, which part of language arts do you need help on? Because by the time a teen gets to these grades, you can see they have some strengths. Perhaps they're higher in literature, in the reading, and lower on writing, or vice versa. So language arts has several subjects under it at this age. There's grammar, there's literature. Literature has turned from reading in the younger grades. Now it's switched and it's called literature. Whoops, excuse me. I think I hit my laptop there. You with me? Okay, so it's reading in the younger grades, literature in the higher grades. It's penmanship in the lower grades, where we're focused on the mechanics of writing, and it's composition, which is composing their thoughts, essays, paragraph writing. It's all coming together. Okay, so we have these several slots under language arts. And see, language arts, to me, in my experience in helping new homeschoolers, the workshops that I used to teach in Texas, and for several years teaching new homeschoolers and seasoned homeschoolers, is I see the struggle always in language arts. And why the struggle? Because sometimes we want to keep all of them the same grade level when our teen is not like that. Just like us, we have passions in certain subjects and other subjects we struggle with. So we want to adjust in the high school years. Okay, math, language arts, history, science. Those are considered now the core subjects for high school. But here's a point. This is a wonderful point. You can start some of the subjects in middle school and count it as credit for high school. Matter of fact, a lot of homeschoolers who have college-bound kids actually start tracking about 7th grade. I didn't track at 7th grade, okay? I let them be kids at 7th grade. But by 8th grade, I started tracking. And you can get other passions and electives in 8th grade. It's a time for a teen to pursue what they like. It's not a time to hit them with a bunch of academics. They have plenty of time for that when they're finished. When they're finished, either if they're pursuing a college or a career track. Okay, so let me get past this first point, because like I said, all of this is connected. I want you to get a big picture for high school. I don't want to just share one little bitty point with you. I want you to have all the details, to be armed with the decisions you make, and to know that you can do high school. Okay, so the first point is stay solid on the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now you're going to add history and science. See, it's not a big mystery. It's just what you've been doing in the lower grades. On my third point, I'm going to give you about how many years to do each one, okay? That way you can plan. But here's another point to remember, and it's something I couldn't have imagined when my kids were young, and that is, I don't have to do all this planning by myself. It's different teaching a 6 or 7-year-old or a 5-year-old than it is a 15, 16, or 17-year-old. They should start taking control for their life. They should have input for what they want to study. And so what happens with the rebellion and the resistant years is that sometimes we try to spoon feed. Yeah, true. They're on the threshold of adulthood, but they're not adults yet. We're training them to be adults. How do we train them? Well, if they can't make a decision about curriculum or their schedule while they're living with you, do you think they can make good decisions when they're not living with you because we haven't really taught them how to be independent? So what we've done in the high school years is we've taken off the teacher hat. Sometimes I still had to be a teacher with each one that came along, but most of the time I just wore my supervisor hat. That's what I did. So what does that mean? Well, they decided the order of the subjects. They decided the subjects. We sat down, we would talk about it. And sometimes, and I have one that wanted to get start later in the day. And I always encourage, when you start homeschool, start first in your day. It doesn't mean morning for everybody. It could mean afternoon. But teens are the same way that they were when they were younger. And that is, if you've done everything else in the day and then you come to homeschool, that's not going to work. They're not fresh. They're not interested. They have to have learning done first in the day. Okay, so I had one that I sat down with him. He didn't like math. Well, guess what? I don't know if I liked it either so much when I was his age. I like it now. But when he put math at the very end of his day, I knew it wasn't going to work. My first knee-jerk reaction was, that's not going to work. We're not doing that, right? Nope. That was my first reaction, but I didn't. I said, okay, let's try to do this. I wanted him to see that I was for him, that he has decisions. He can make decisions, right? You know who was right. I was right. But I tried it. And he was frustrated. He came back. He didn't get it done. He didn't progress in his math. We were up against the end of the year because I was tracking by the credits. And guess what? He had to really work to get it done. Failure is a good teacher. I didn't have to go on and on and on and watch his eyes roll at me and have these arguments with him because I wouldn't try it his way. But I was very clear what was going to happen if it didn't work. See, consequences is a great natural teacher, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? It is. We don't have to argue with our team. Sometimes I hear, they don't want to do anything. They may not. So you ask them, what do you want to do? And there's a balance, right? There's a balance. If they don't want to do anything, then guess what? If they're not able to do that, there may be some other things that they like that they're not able to do. We have to be consistent with them. Not always button heads, just consistent. Okay, so give them some control, the order of the subjects and what subjects. And we don't need to use the same curriculum provider with all of our teens. Each of my teams that came along at the high school years picked different writing programs, picked different history programs, because we want to teach to their learning style. We sat down, we planned it. They got control where they wanted to do it, the order of the subjects, and when. Because it also works on the flip side. When they scheduled well and they moved ahead and they got a subject, oh, that's beautiful because they know how to make decisions. And when he's not living with you anymore and they're not with you anymore and you see them making good decisions in their life, you know, you think, did I really go back to the high school years when they made their schedule and they did their subjects? Absolutely, yes, it did. Because we're not going to spoon feed them. But be sure you have a standard, set a guideline as a supervisor and say, this is what we need. How can we get there? Hey, Wendy, glad to have you here. Let me see. Thanks. Oh, good. I'm glad you need the topic. Great, 9th grade. And just remember, too, she's going to be 9th grade next year, Wendy, that I have a blog post on my site when it says avoid the sock it to them. That's what I did in ninth grade. Woo, we're in high school now. Woo, woo, woo. Sock it to them. That don't work. Just letting you know, that don't work. We just want to ease into the high school years because the maturity level will be different for each kid. That's something else I've also learned. They're not all, just because they're that certain age, and the educational world touts this, okay, now they're high school, they're all going to do this load. It doesn't work that way. Grade has nothing to do with it. It is maturity. Sometimes they're mature in middle school, ready to take on some high school. Sometimes it takes them a year or two in high school before they're able to sock it and get after it. That's been my experience. Hey, Tara, glad to have you here. Oh, I'm glad you watch the videos. I have a lot to tell you. And I always lie. I say I'm going to keep it to 15 minutes. Sheesh. I can't talk 15 minutes to save my life. I get on here and always have so much to tell you, and then I want you to know it all. So I try to keep it short, but I have a lot to tell you. But I'm so glad you're here. And you're welcome for supporting homeschool. And I wholeheartedly believe in it, and I have the proof to show it too. Okay, let me give these other points. I want to share 2 more points. The next point I want to share is keep all doors open for your teen. Why? Okay, this is a hard time for teens in their life. Their hormones are all over the place. Your hormones are all over the place too. But when I mean keep all doors open, I mean when they say, well, I know I'm not interested. I'm not going to college, or I'm not going to do this career, or I'm not going to do anything except graduate. Okay, that may be the way they feel right now. There's seasons in life. Some days we're not on it. Some days we're just like, okay, whatever today. And other days we're like, woo, woo. Our kids are the same way. They come bouncing some days. Other days they're like, Mom, I don't know why you chose to homeschool. There's nothing I like about it. Okay, they can be that way just like we can. But when I mean keep all doors open, what I mean by that is don't get lopsided and don't put a lot of pressure. Don't get lopsided subject-wise. Sure, if they're interested in something, you want to be able to cover more of those subjects, whether it's science or history. In homeschool, we have time to do that, to put all those love that we want to, all those subject loves into the day. But when I mean don't get lopsided, I mean don't say, okay, well, we don't need that many maths. We only need 2 maths or 2 language arts. It may not be the same language arts for each year, but give them 3 or 4 math, 3 or 4 language arts. Keep the doors open so that if they graduate school or later on when they're out on their own and they're adults, and they'll come back and say, Mom, why didn't we do this? I've seen that too with some friends that have homeschooled. It was a very meager high school, and later on they regret not covering a few more subjects, having a little bit more credits so they could put that on the transcript for college. But even if you make that mistake, hear my heart on this too, even if you make that mistake, a lot of colleges are just basing the entrance off of test scores. But you still want to have that transcript that's balanced because you want them to have an overall well-rounded academic course for high school. You want to introduce them to the maths, the language arts. You want those skills to be solid when they get ready to leave you and get out on their own. So when I say keep all doors open, that means keep the subjects that they're doing each year. Don't try to, shortchange them on one of them. I have written down here, because I want to remember all this, I have written down here exactly the credits. Now, hear my heart on this too, okay? I'm a very detailed person, but I don't like telling other people exacts. Everyone's different, okay? I'm trying to, when I speak in my workshops, when I speak and I give you advice, I want to give you a rule of thumb, because there's nothing worse than watching a video or workshop and saying, oh, we're behind, we need to be doing this. There's no behind. There's no behind. I just want to give you a rule of thumb, because one thing I don't like being told when I ask a question is for someone to say, oh, they'll get it. Yeah, I know they'll get it. But how do we do it? How do we get there? So that's what I want to do here. Okay, so the math, you want to have about 3 or 4 years. Yes, I've seen some homeschoolers do 2 years. That's okay too. That's okay. If you don't have a math kid and you don't think they're going to do a college or career track with math, 2 years, guess what? Back in the day, that used to be solid. That used to be fine. You could have 19 credits and be done with high school. Now the educational world touts on us. If we have 19, surely we can get 27. And let's just cram more on them. When actually the high school years is the time that they should be young and carefree, stress-free, and enjoying. Wendy, So you're in California. Yes, well, California, I think the core subjects, yeah, math, science, the core subjects for most any state, because California has a little bit more record keeping, but the core subjects, math, language arts, science, and history. Those are the 4 core subjects. And remember, I explained earlier, under language arts comes grammar, composition, and literature, vocabulary, things like that. That comes underneath the language arts. So the 4 core subjects, that's what I'm going over right here. When I give these years, these are the core subjects. And if you keep them for regardless of which state you're in, that is a well-rounded, balanced transcript. But remember to check with your state first, the state law. Okay, a lot of them I'm familiar with because they're relaxed, but not everybody has relaxed state laws. Like, for example, I don't want to go too far off here on the details, but you know I roll with the details. 180 days is what we have in a lesson plan, right? 180 days is what's considered a 9-month year, regular school year, 5 days a week. Some states say 140, some states say 160. So you have some give, you see there? You have some give with your lesson planning. So the first thing is to determine how many school days your state requires. And if it doesn't require, then stick with 180. That's a good basic rule of thumb, to stick with 180. But math, language arts, science, and history, those are the core subjects at the high school years. Okay, let me go back over this. Math, 3 to 4 years. Language arts, 3 to 4 years. Under language arts, now, and math, let me go back to math. Remember, that can be geometry, calculus, algebra 1, algebra 2. I don't think anymore pre-algebra is not considered high school anymore. I think that's pretty well for middle school. I think colleges use that as a rule of thumb. So decide a math course, those subjects, even just 2. It can be basic mathematics, financial mathematics. There's so many courses. It doesn't just have to be the algebra, geometry, path, unless you do have a kid that you want for college and you want to check with them first to see what their prerequisites, easy for me to say, what they are, what the requirements are for them. But decide a math course. Okay, so in other words, under math, we don't just have to take all the geometry, calculus, algebra, but those are basics for a student. And in language arts, we have grammar. We don't have to do grammar every year. Perhaps you have a child that loves writing. Okay, then you do creative writing. Or you could also add in, if it's not the grammar, you add literature. You could do American literature. You could focus on British authors, literary analysis. Language arts has so many different courses under it too that it doesn't have to be grammar, literature. Spice is the variety at high school. Spice is the variety. We want to find out, what does our student like? For example, I had my first grad, he loved history. I could tie anything into history and he would do it. I could tie anything into history. So we did writing, we did grammar, he did his literature, everything was centered around history. And we got in our social studies, our history that we needed. It's called social studies too, for some social studies and history. They kind of use that interchangeably, but social studies could also cover geography. Okay, so math, language arts, I just want to show you the variety under each of those general topics. I don't want you just to think, oh, it has to be grammar, oh, and I have to do literature. We can hone in on certain sub-courses. Make it interesting for our team. Make it to where it's unique for their passions and what they enjoy. Okay, social studies, which I've been calling history, social studies, about 3 years, and science, to about 3 or 4 years, and that also includes 2 years of lab. They have some wonderful lab equipment. If your kids are in the younger grades, I would think about go ahead and see it of including microscopes. Or here's another thing too. Me and another mom, we shared some expenses of science expenses because we knew our kids would be the same age in most middle school and high school. So you can do that. But just remember, your kitchen has a lot of things that you can already use for science. But usually the sciences are going to include 2 labs at the high school level. Okay, and then there's so many branches of science too, so many different types of chemistry, so many different types of biology. You can hone in on one of those branches and really make it a fun study for high school. And then foreign language is usually 2 to 4 years. It just depends on what the college says, but 2 years. I did 2 years with each kid. That was good. And then usually PE or health is usually a year and a half, 1 credit, or 2 credits. That's it. It's not any harder than that. And the rest of it, we just fill in with their passions and what they enjoy, which I always encourage you to check the electives and to start them in high school. My kids done volunteer work, they did photography. And here's the thing, if they don't like it, then go on to something else, because that is the time for them also to delve into their passions. You won't know what they want to do at the end of high school if they haven't had time to explore things that they enjoy doing, right? So that's what you want them to do. Let them have time to explore what they enjoy doing. Even in the middle, start in the middle school years, start tracking about 8th grade. Okay, I have a lot more to tell you on how to prepare the transcript. I have an editable free transcript. Editable, you know, you can type in it, type editable, that type. You can type into it. I have the courses to take. I have several series on my site, Tina's Dynamic Homeschool Plus, about how to school teens, the high school years, dual credit, what's dual enrollment. That's also another option for them at high school. I don't want to overwhelm you with that. That's not what this one's about. I mostly want to stick to reminding you to keep all doors open. Don't put a lot of pressure on your teens, you know, and ask him, what do you want to do? He doesn't even know what he wants to do. She doesn't know what she wants to do. Well, how many 40 and 50-year-olds do you know that they don't know what they want to do still in life? I say 40, 50, that's bad, isn't it? I tell my kids, many 30-year-olds don't know what they want to do. So don't put that pressure on them. If they don't know nothing, just pursue the electives, because all those electives can go on to the high school transcript and start record keeping. And I'll talk some more. I have another video about record keeping. I'll show you how to prepare the transcript, show you how to balance the credits for each year, but mostly just enjoy the high school years. They'll be past. Your kids won't be with you anymore. You'll look back and you'll be so happy that the relationship meant more, the time that you have with them, savor the time. And when they're grown and they tell you back how much they enjoyed the teen years, and the relationship you have with them when they're grown will be worth every bit of stress that you may feel right now. And of course, if you have any questions, post them here. I'll be happy to answer them. I have a lot on my site too. I'm going to have a lot more workshops. I'll break them each down to topics so you can process it. So stick with the 3 R's, the core subjects: math, language arts, social studies, science, the stated 3 to 4 years for math, 3 to 4 years for the language arts, 3 to 4 years for science with 2 labs, social studies about 3 years, foreign language about 2 years, and PE and health a year and a half or 2. I just want to be sure you take that away from it. And of course, like I said, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for watching. I'll talk at y'all later. Bye.